Hi. So before we go any further, I just want to tell you a little story. So roughly a year and a half ago, I was being pulled in so many different directions. I'm in what you would call the sandwich generation, right? Which means essentially I'm in the process of going through my own midlife transitions, dealing with my own health challenges, but I'm also raising young adults and I'm also taking care of aging parents as well. And so for those of us who are found in this position, we feel our energies being pulled in so many different directions. And I realized in the midst of leading a small progressive high school in New York City that I actually had to step away. I had to actually think about in that moment what my priorities were. And I realized that while my career, my leadership journey was important to me, it wasn't as important as my family. And so that's one of the things that I think is important for us all to do, is to really be clear about what's important for us at each stage of our life. And the reality is that it can shift. So if you think about the different areas of life, be it health, family, relationships, finances, career, creative hobbies, you might want to begin to think about whether or not you're making time and space for things that are really important to you. And it doesn't mean that you have to spend the same amount of time on those different areas, but it does mean that you think about them in that particular order of priority. So back to my story. When I recognized that I would in fact have to step away and take some family leave, I realized that the importance of systems. Systems means that the entire community, the ecosystem, shouldn't rely on any one person. And so once you have systems in place, it means that everyone is allowed to actually take care of themselves when they need to. So that only emphasized for me the importance of designing systems to support people in positions of leadership. And that brings us to why we're here. So my name is Kalima Fergus Ayele. I am a global school leader, systems design architect, and CEO and founder of Round Trip Ticket Home. The reason why I call it Round Trip Ticket Home is because I sincerely believe that we are all on a journey to return to our true selves. And that journey takes many twists and turns, but the journey is the destination. And we can enjoy the process along the way. I'm not saying that it should be easy. In fact, I don't think life is easy. I think it's challenging, but I think we get to choose how it's challenging. And for me, the challenge comes from doing the difficult work of being self-reflective, of actually being willing to look at the things and the parts of myself that may not be easy to see, so that I can grow and move forward. And that journey has taken me through a lot of different adventures, which I'd love to share with you along the way. But it's allowed me to work in some different countries in the world. So I am originally from Brooklyn, New York. Part of my childhood was spent in the Caribbean in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. And so some of what informs the way that I show up in the world is really around this idea of belonging. And because as a young child, I experienced the impact of not feeling a sense of belonging. When I was in the Caribbean, I sounded too American. When I was in the US, I sounded too Caribbean. And so there's a part of me that always feels like she doesn't quite fit in. And as a result, I've developed these tools that I use to navigate the world. Now, some of those tools serve me and some of them don't. But the practice of being aware is what helps me to navigate how I show up in the world along the way. And so one of the things that I want to spend some time thinking about and talking about is the ways in which we can help each other along the journey. And maybe some of the stories that we've been told that we actually have to unlearn because they're no longer serving us. They're just not working anymore. And so one of those myths, if you will, I think, is that many of us believe that if we just work hard enough, willpower is what's going to get us through. But I think when you're in leadership, willpower is actually a failing strategy. And I want to explain why. A huge part of it is just the research that's come out. When someone is dysregulated, they actually have an impact on the people around them. Now, what's interesting is that the impact is not always equal. It does depend on the positions of power in that relationship. And so what that means is, if you have a classroom and the adult in the classroom is dysregulated, the students are more impacted than vice versa. And so the adult in that position has an ability to affect whether or not the other students in the room feel safe. And so practicing tools of self-regulation, whether it be deep breathing techniques or just figuring out how to get yourself calm and comfortable in your own skin, actually has a greater impact on those around you. And this translates to leadership as well. If you're the one in leadership and you're running in survival mode, just know that you're having a disproportionate impact on the people around you. And so think about what are the tools that you can use to feel centered and grounded as a leader. And I have to say that my belief is that everyone is a leader, regardless of your position or title. You show up in the world, even if you're just leading one, or organization of one, which is you and your own life, you are still a leader. And so regardless of your role, as part of your family unit, as part of your friendship group, as part of your community, as part of your work organization or company, your school, and just the world, you are a leader. And so what are the ways that we have to take ownership of our role in the world so that we can move forward in a way that supports where we want to go? So I want to talk a little bit about why willpower is actually a failing strategy for leadership. First of all, willpower is a finite resource. And so those who study energy and healing know a lot more about this. But essentially, willpower comes from the third chakra, also known as the solar plexus, which is located somewhere in the middle of your torso. Like if you think of this power source in your stomach area, right? It's this drive for you to move forward. And unfortunately, if we consistently use our willpower to move through situations that are not in alignment with what we should be doing, we actually end up draining that energy. And so that's first of all, and that's what leads to a lot of burnout among folks who continuously and consistently do this. The second thing is that when you use willpower to move through situations that you should not just be pushing through, that sort of like, we'll just push through it, it masks the real issue, right? Because essentially what you're doing is you're blocking your ability to see what the real challenge is beneath what you're facing, because you're just going to keep sort of using your sheer will to push through it. And finally, and most importantly, it's just not scalable. It's not sustainable. It doesn't serve. It's not something that can be passed on to other people, right? So you and your position of leadership might be using willpower, but then what happens when you need to step away? It's not something that can be scaled or can sustain without you pushing behind it. So that's really what you want to be thinking about. So what's the shift here that needs to happen? So instead of asking yourself, how can I work harder? Like, what can I do? Like, do I need to get up even earlier or do more? You can actually slow down and say, what would actually help me to remove this challenge in the first place? So essentially what you're doing is you're trying to look for the friction, I'll call it, the friction point that is actually causing the challenge in the first place. And so if we do that, then we actually are like now beginning to think about where the design challenge would be, right? Because you're actually slowing down enough to say, I'm not just going to keep pushing through. Maybe there's another way that I can design this system so that I'm not just using willpower to overcome the challenge. And so that's my action step for you, is to identify one thing that you're doing this week that actually is requiring you to shift into that, like, I'm going to just push through this mode. You know what it is. And so I just want you to just notice it. Don't do anything about it yet. Don't try to fix it. Just notice this as your first point of friction, if you will. Okay. And so that's our first challenge. That's all you have to do, is just to notice and observe, right? Let's not do anything else yet. And again, if you want more, please do join our community in Substack, where we are continuing these conversations in long form content. See you there. Bye.